Big Bell Bookfriend Q Group. For 29537593 welcome to join Reborn. Until the end of the Qin Dynasty, Zhao decided to earn some quick money from Emperor Qin Shi Huang as he was about to patrol the east and die on the way. He then moved away from this place, but little did he know that Emperor Qin Shi Huang could hear his voice and conferred him a title, an official title, binding him to the Great Qin. Qin Shi Huang said, "If you dare to slip away, confiscate millions of your property." Zhao was scared and said, "Your Majesty, I won't run away. I am willing to give you health supplements to help you prolong your life. I will give you advice and suggestions to change the situation of the imminent downfall of the Great Qin Dynasty. I will give you modern seeds, plant high-yield crops, and ensure that the people have sufficient food and clothing. I will give you airplanes and cannons, take over dynasties such as the Western Chang and Western regions, and become the world's eternal emperor." Keywords of the novel. De Qin. Qin Shi Huang can hear my heart's no pop-ups. De Qin. Qin Shi Huang can hear my heart's complete collection. Download TXT. De Qin. Qin Shi Huang can hear my heart's latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Qin Shi Huang can hear Zhao's hearts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Qin Shi Huang can hear Zhao's hearts. Your Majesty is here. In 210 BC, Emperor Qin Shi Huang presided over the residence of Li Si, and the entire Li family respectfully welcomed him outside, kneeling down. "Please see your Majesty, Li Si." Li Si arched his hand and saluted at the front. "See your Majesty." The family members also kowtowed one after another, feeling extremely nervous. In front of the crowd, a group of guards wearing light helmets stood with swords. In the center was a man with gray temples and tired eyes, but not angry but majestic. He was Qin Shi Huang. After the unification of the 6 countries, in order to deter the remaining evils of other countries, he had already conducted 4 rounds of eastward patrols. This time, he was preparing for the 5th round. Before the eastward tour, he had to meet with the families of influential people to express his respect for them and to see if there were any talented individuals among them, so as to reserve talent for his son's future succession. "Let's all get up. I am just a guest today, there is no need to be too reserved." "Your Majesty, thank you." The Li family members are all grateful for their kindness. "Is this the eternal Emperor Qin Shi Huang? His voice is powerful and heart-wrenching, and he is truly the Eternal One." This sound. Zhang seemed to hear a mysterious voice, very long and seemingly from the depths of his heart, but not yet. Unfortunately, the upcoming 5th East tour is his doomsday. "What?" I heard a mysterious voice again. "Who?" In an instant, Zhang's face changed. A wave of embankments filled his eyes, but he didn't see anyone talking. "There's a situation." The guards saw Zhang's abnormality and were extremely vigilant. They quickly drew their sword and surrounded Zhang. The Li family members were also panicked and looked back frequently, but did not notice any abnormal situation. Zhao, one of the family members, was also taken aback. He looked around and thought to himself, "What's the situation? Are there any assassins? We finally managed to get the opportunity to meet the Eternal Emperor. Can't anything happen?" That's the sound. Zhang frowned upon hearing this and secretly thought that the person who made the sound must have never seen him before. He must have come to see him on purpose, but who was it? The majestic gaze fell on the Li family members. Just now he noticed that the voice was coming from within the family. "No way. Emperor Qin Shi Huang is looking this way, may the assassin be right between us." Zhang fixed his gaze on Zhao. He confirmed that the sound was coming from this person. This person is dressed in brand new clothes, with a curious and cautious appearance. But this person didn't speak up. How could there be any sound? Zhang was extremely curious. "No, Emperor Qin Shi Huang noticed me. He wouldn't think I was an assassin, would he? I'm too small to bear this crime. Still the same voice, Ing Zheng's eyes froze. This person still didn't speak, but the voice did indeed come from him. Is it ventriloquism? But obviously, the others didn't hear it. Can only I hear it? It must be, he. There is such a strange thing in the world. However, who exactly is this person? Why is the 5th Eastern Expedition the end of my life? Don't panic, I didn't sleep well last night, it's just an illusion. Ing Zheng understood the source of his voice, dispelled his vigilance, and waved his hand, ordering the guards to step aside and put away their swords. This person poses no threat to him. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing it. Li Zhao also breathed a sigh of relief and thought to himself, it turned out to be an illusion. It scared me and I thought I was being targeted. Alright, young talents all raise their heads and show me a good look. Ing Zheng swept the family and ordered the young people standing at the front to kneel and lower their heads. The young people were overjoyed and quickly lifted their heads, their faces full of anticipation. They have heard that your Majesty's Eastern Expedition, consisting of 3 officials and 9 ministers, is for selecting talents. In other words, if they can be favored, their future is promising. Li Zhao also raised his head to see this famous figure in history, the Eternal Emperor. It's somewhat similar to the engraving in the book, majestic and elegant, but unfortunately its lifespan is a bit short. It should still be less than a year. What? Upon hearing this voice again, Ing Zheng's scalp tingled and his whole body trembled with coldness. He muttered to himself, what is this person talking nonsense about? I still have less than a year to live. Although my body is becoming increasingly weak, everything is normal. How could it have a lifespan of less than a year? A child's mouth is full of yellow. Seeing a hint of doubt on Ing Zheng's angry expression, his already weathered face was smeared with a hint of gloom. Li Zhao felt that the old man was very pitiful and sighed helplessly, thinking to himself, oh. The Eternal Emperor is sad. He didn't expect to die on the sand dune, did he? What? I died on a sand dune. At this moment, Ing Zheng's heart trembled. He has already determined the route for this eastward tour, and will depart in a month. It will indeed pass through sand dunes, but he did not tell anyone about the route except for a few confidants. Even Prime Minister Li Si doesn't know, how could this son know? Does he have the ability to predict the future? It's very likely, otherwise he wouldn't have known the route of the Eastern Expedition. But although my body is deteriorating day by day, I have swallowed the golden pill. This pill can make me immortal. How dare I say I died on a sand dune? Ing Zheng's face appeared unsightly. Is he cursing me? Such a malicious boy, we must expose him later. Very good Jun Kai. You are all the future of my Great Qin. Li Xiang's guidance is effective. Ing Zheng suppressed his anger and carefully looked at the young people, satisfied and spoke up. The young people were all very excited upon hearing this, which all showed that His Majesty had a good opinion of them and stepped forward one after another, full of energy and energy. Li Zhao also happily took a step forward, wanting to get up close with the Eternal Emperor and this famous figure in history. However, she was glared fiercely by the aunt next to her, Mrs. Li Si. Li Zhao couldn't help but complain in his heart, poisonous woman, why are you staring at me? Can't I see that even a single emperor can't do it? Auntie's intention is very obvious, which is to prevent him from getting close to Qin Shi Huang and deprive him of the opportunity to be admired. Humph. Do you dare to stare at me like this when my family still has a vast wealth? It's not like trying to please me everywhere. It's better now, my father has died, and all my wealth has been taken over by you, so I'll turn my back and not recognize anyone. I often say that I am a wild seed and should starve to death on the streets, despicable. Ma Dan, do you want me to invite a crazy woman to marry you? Did you treat your nephew like this? Li Zhao muttered angrily in his heart. Li Zhao's father Li Nian and Li Si were cousins. Before Li Si became prime minister, he was taken care of by the Li Zhao family, and even becoming prime minister was the result of Li Zhao's father's efforts. After his father's death, his mother was forced away by them, his family's wealth was taken over, and everything changed. Li Zhao became a wild seed that even a servant could beat and scold at will. If it weren't for Li Zhao being a modern person reborn from the 21st century, his mentality would have collapsed long ago. Poisonous woman. Starving to death on the streets. Nephew. Upon hearing Li Zhao's voice, Yingzheng hesitated for a moment, his eyes narrowed, and his heart moved. It turned out that his background was so pitiful. The Li family is really despicable and ungrateful. He had also faintly heard of Li Nian's family background. His cousin Li Nian was one of the wealthiest merchants in Xianyang City, but later he declined. It was said that he couldn't bear the excitement of decline and jumped into the river to commit suicide. There were even rumors that Li Nian was forced to do so. It is despicable that Li Si should treat the deceased child like this. He has the ability, but his heart is not very good. Yingzheng thought this way and suddenly heard his inner voice. Ma Dan, anyway, after the death of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, Emperor Qin too indiscriminately killed, the Great Qin was destroyed, and the world was in chaos. Then I will go out to collect money from troubled times, so I don't want to see this poisonous woman every day. What? Yingzheng was startled and the corners of his mouth trembled. Qin too indiscriminately killed. Is the Great Qin Dynasty destroyed? What's going on? Does it mean that after my death, Fu Su turned his personality and implemented tyranny? Fu Su is my eldest son and the key successor to be trained, but he is kind-hearted and has a single mind. Can he kill indiscriminately? Moreover, even if Fu Su changed his character, according to his abilities and the support of the Mongol family, how could the Great Qin perish? Nonsense, the kid is not satisfied with me, the Qin. But the kid did indeed foresee that I was passing through the sand dunes on my east tour just now. At this moment, Yingzheng's heart was very uncomfortable and tormented. Li Si was unaware of the inner workings of Li Zhao and Yingzheng. Upon hearing Yingzheng's words of praise, he hurriedly approached the driver in fear and saluted, "Thank you, Your Majesty, for your praise." Yingzheng squeezed out a smile and said, "He, Li Xiangqian is too modest." Then his gaze swept over Li Zhao, who was standing at the end, and fell on a young man closely following Li Si. He reached out and pointed, saying, "But your child. Welcome to join the Bookfriend group of this work. 429537593, end of this chapter. Chapter 2. Li Zhao's Enjoyment. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Li Zhao's Enjoyment. It's Li Zhan, the second son. Li Si secretly rejoiced. Your Majesty has noticed his second son. Li Yu, the eldest son of Li Si, is very outstanding. He was appointed as the governor of Sanchuan County at a young age and even married a princess. Ko Er is very mediocre, and it is difficult to secure a position and a half of an official. At this moment, Your Majesty noticed him, and perhaps he would be favored. After speaking, he glared angrily at Li Zhao on the spot, his eyes malicious, and then smiled and said to Li Zhan, "I haven't kowtowed to Your Majesty yet." Li Zhan kowtowed to Your Majesty. Li Zhan quickly approached and kowtowed, but when he saw Yingzheng's majestic gaze, his legs trembled and he couldn't even speak fluently. Li Zhao cursed inwardly, "What are you staring at? Like a poisonous woman, isn't it just to keep me away and not steal your son's limelight? Stay away, stay away. If you don't want to admire the charm of the eternal emperor, I wouldn't be so close. Don't even look at what your son is. He's usually so domineering that he doesn't even let his maids go. How could he pee when he sees Emperor Qin Shi Huang? He's such a coward. I don't want to steal his attention. Upon hearing Li Zhao's voice, Ying glanced sideways at Li Zhan with disappointment on his face. It turned out that this person was like this. So he just nodded and skimmed over. This was just an inadvertent gesture, but it sank in Lisa's heart. Your Majesty's expression is not in favor of his second son, it shouldn't be. Heir performed quite well. He was selected in this way when he was young. Your Majesty, my son Li Jianshu is outstanding in poetry. Can he still write poetry? Without showing any signs, Li Si said to Ying, striving for another chance for Li Zhan. Then he immediately instructed Li Zhan, I won't write a song for your Majesty to listen to on the spot. Li Zhan realized it later and quickly spoke up, reciting is like a day when you are approaching, and your heart is often like crossing a bridge. Upon hearing this, Ying's eyebrows and eyes widened, and a rare smile appeared on his face. He couldn't help but close his eyes and ponder, saying for a long time, not bad. Not bad, this is really your poem. Although the poem is short, it is not a poem of the current dynasty. Ying read the meaning from it. When encountering a king, one should think deeply and be careful when encountering a bridge. Isn't this saying that when encountering a king, one must be respectful and respectful? He likes this poem. If it were really Li Zhan's work, he wouldn't mind giving him an official title. Upon hearing this, Li Si was overjoyed and secretly thought to himself that His Majesty's reaction was the same as when he saw the eldest child. This time, he was stable, and he must have been stable. Perhaps the second son, like the eldest, was also appointed as a county magistrate by His Majesty. Exactly. Li Zhan quickly replied, feeling extremely happy in his heart. He couldn't believe that plagiarism was so practical in pleasing his father's poetry. Ying smiled contentedly and thought to himself that he should be given a reward. He then said, Li Xiangna. Tiger father has no sons of dogs. With such poetic talent, I believe he is also outstanding in other aspects, so I'll give him a reward. Suddenly, I heard that inner voice again. Shameless, it's not his work. It was clearly something I recited when I was bored, but he plagiarized. Ying's words came to a sudden halt, and his face darkened. Taking a special glance at Li Zhao, he saw a look of indignation and a clear understanding in his heart. I see, such a good poem was not written by Li Zhan. How dare Li Zhan deceive the emperor? But Ying had no intention of being punished, but he would not be demoted. Okay, let him go down, he waved his hand in disgust. What? Li Si hesitated for a moment and couldn't react. Something's wrong, didn't your Majesty prepare to seal it just now? How can we let heir go down? He finally managed to win this opportunity, isn't it going to be too bad? Your Majesty, this, my son. Li Si was anxious and wanted to fight, but was stopped by Ying. Alright, don't say anything more. With these words, Li Si forcefully pushed back the words he wanted to say, leaving him puzzled as to why His Majesty's attitude had changed so much. He. Of course, I'm afraid even if Li Si thinks about it for the rest of his life, he won't understand. Ying glanced at Li Si and pointed to Li Zhao behind Li Zhan, asking, is the kid in the back your nephew? In an instant, Li Zhao hesitated. Chao, Qin Shi Huang noticed me. Have you heard that I have great talent? It's true that I have great talent, but I'm not the son of an old beast. How did you notice me? He was somewhat surprised and had a wild thought in his heart. Upon hearing this heartfelt response, Ying smiled slightly and muttered to himself, good kid, even if you have great talent, you won't show it. Fortunately, I have a unique perspective. Besides writing poetry, what you mean by great talent also has the ability to predict the future. Not bad, very good. I'm done with it. It's the nephew of the old minister, named Li Zhao, but his talent is insufficient, which makes your Majesty laugh. Li Si shook his head with a feigned hatred. He complained a bit, how could he let this kid come out to see the driver? Isn't this stealing the spotlight from his son? But soon he didn't take it to heart. Li Xiaoping's performance was mediocre, and he was not half as talented as his son. His Majesty doesn't even look up to his son, how could he look up to him? Oh. Is that right? To Li Xi's surprise, Ying Zheng showed a strong curiosity and said, "It's the son of that wealthy businessman. If I can create such a foundation, I believe my son will not be bad either." What? What does it mean? Lisa's face changed. Your Majesty, are you praising Li Zhao? This is the desired rhythm, damn it, how can it be? How can my son be seen if he is not seen? Moreover, the Great Qin Dynasty emphasized agriculture and suppressed commerce, while Li Nian was a wealthy merchant. As an emperor, he should not have favored the sons of wealthy merchants. Come, come, let me see you. Your father has donated a lot of money to me. Ying Zheng ignored Li Xi and changed his previous seriousness. He smiled and said, his eyes unusually soft. How could that be? Li Xi was once again surprised and puzzled. His Majesty's gaze was very soft. What kind of magic did Li Zhao have that attracted His Majesty? The more Li Xi thought about it, the more things went wrong. Based on his performance, Li Zhao's performance today was average without any advantages. But why does your Majesty have such an expression? Me. Li Zhao couldn't believe it and pointed to himself, thinking to himself, I can't believe it. The Eternal Emperor actually called me over, I'm not dreaming, am I? This kid. Ying Zheng smiled and wanted to say, you're not dreaming, your talent caught my attention. Your Majesty, I have the audacity to request mercy on this young man. Since his father's death, I have spoiled him, which has made him difficult to speak. I'm afraid it will disturb your Majesty's interest in talent selection. Li Xi couldn't figure it out and didn't want Li Zhao to be seen, so he quickly stepped forward to ridicule. Old beast, old beast. Upon hearing these words, Li Zhao cursed Li Xi millions of times in his heart. Petting him. Nonsense, when did he spoil himself? When he was not yet a prime minister, he took over his family's wealth, drove away his mother, and treated him like a dog. Is this a pet? Oh. Upon hearing this, Ying Zheng couldn't help but laugh inwardly. He secretly thought to himself how much he disliked Li Xi. He must have been abused at home. Really? I don't necessarily think he's being spoiled, but he has a lot of resentment. Ying Zheng said calmly, his eyes sharp. This Li Xi hesitated and secretly asked, how did your Majesty know? He often abuses Li Zhao, but he has never publicly disclosed it. He is certain that the court officials do not know, and your Majesty should not know, but Li Xiling was in chaos and didn't know how to answer the conversation for a moment, let alone dare not taking Zheng's gaze. Come over quickly, it's you. Ying Zheng set aside Li Xi and waved at Li Zhao. Li Zhao was taken aback for a moment, but the imperial decree could not be disobeyed, so he stepped forward without any signs of panic. Li Zhao pays his respects to your Majesty. Kneel down like Li Zhan. No need to be polite. Ying Zheng nodded slightly, satisfied with Li Zhao's performance. Encountering a ruler is not timid, it is a person that can be created. Of course, as a person of 2 generations, Li Zhao still has this kind of courage. Suddenly, Ying Zheng became serious and said loudly, Li Zhao, I'll appoint you as the eldest son's book boy. Accompany the eldest son in his studies. What? What is the situation? Upon hearing this, Li felt a wave of panic in his heart. This tusk is really favored by His Majesty. He is still a book boy. Although he is only a book boy without any titles or official positions, he is still a person beside the Grand Prince. The eldest son was highly trained by His Majesty. If there were no mistakes, he would be like a crown prince, and the future emperor and scholar would be like a fragrant steamed bun. How could it be? How could it be him who was sealed, isn't it his son? Li Si gave Li Zhao a fierce glare in his heart. Also, can this tusk handle it? How can't you tell that even half of his second son is not as good as his? And this tusk has never shown any talent in front of his majesty, how was it sealed? Li Si is crazy. Li Zhao was taken aback in his heart, feeling very surprised, and was thus banned. How did Qin Shi Huang know he had great talent? Did he know him before? It shouldn't be. He has never seen Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Just as I was about to ask a question, a voice suddenly rang out in my mind. Given your achievements, it has touched the system. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Touching the Heart Sound System. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Touching the Heart Sound System. Considering your achievements and triggering the system is ready to start. Would you accept it as the host? What? Li Zhaojing was shocked by Ying Zheng's words and was also moved by the voice that appeared in his mind. System. He actually has a system. After being reborn for 17 years, there has never been the welfare that the army of rebirth should have. Today, there is actually one. This system has arrived too late, right? Of course, he certainly accepts. Other reincarnations have systems that soar one by one, and they don't expect to soar. They just need to live happily. Accept. Okay, the system is officially launched. As long as the host achieves something, they will touch the system and receive rewards. System. Rewards. When Li Zhao heard these two words, he didn't feel very unfamiliar because he had read too many novels in his past life, so naturally he had read various systems, and it seemed that his voice system was not unique either. What kind of reward will that be? What kind of achievement can touch the system? He felt that it was this time that he was granted the title of Grand Prince Scholar by Emperor Qin Shi Huang, which led to his achievements. Is there such a good thing? Li Zhao has developed a strong interest in the system. If I achieve more in the future, will I be able to receive more rewards? Li Zhao believes that the answer is affirmative. Do you accept the reward of 100,000 seeds each for Compa rice, Huanghua rice, and hybrid rice? Seed. Li Zhao was disappointed for a moment. Other people's system rewards were all martial arts secrets, 3 levels of realm enhancement, or something like 100,000 soldiers. However, his luck was that he was just a seed, which was a bit disappointing. However, these seeds look okay. In my past life, when I helped my parents with agricultural work at home, I also studied some rice to increase production, and I have some understanding of the rewards provided by the system. Zhanqing rice, a product of the Qin Dynasty, is drought-resistant and matures early. There are many beans and large grains in the western sky, and various envoys sought their seeds with precious goods, which fully demonstrates the preciousness and rarity of Zhanqing rice in the Qin Dynasty. However, the disadvantage is that it only ripens once a year in the Guangdong region, and it takes too long to harvest. Huanghua Zhan has strong tillering ability, good disease resistance, high seed setting rate, excellent quality, and can yield up to 500 kilograms per mu. It ripens twice a year, which seems to be able to make money in the short term. Good reward. The most satisfying thing for Li Zhao is the hybrid rice, which was developed by Grandpa Yuan. Hee. Although the system rewards are not stunning, they are still decent. At least with these seeds, one can earn some money in the uncivilized Qin Dynasty. He is willing to accept it. Of course, this place is not an acceptable place. If 3 bags of seeds were to appear out of thin air, I wonder if it would scare Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Accept later. Okay, the system will temporarily help you keep it, but a storage fee of 30.5 taels will be charged. What? Li Zhao cursed inwardly. The system is a bit greedy. 30 Qin.5 liang is not much for the Li family, but for him it is just astronomical numbers. Although he grew up in the Prime Minister's family and was immensely honored, since his father's death, the poisonous woman and the old beast have never given him any money. We need to find a way to quickly earn some money, otherwise we won't even be able to get the seeds out. The scene returned to reality, and when Li Zhaojing regained his senses from the joy of obtaining the system, he saw Li Si quietly approaching Yingzheng. Your Majesty, Li Zhao has a stubborn personality and is afraid of affecting the young master's mood. My son Li Zhan is different. He is not only outstanding in knowledge, but also very sensible. Why not replace him? Li Si couldn't just let Li Zhao succeed like this. He gritted his head and said, of course, his son couldn't miss this opportunity. Old beast, am I stubborn in character? I made it up. What kind of goods Li Zhan is, but he has outstanding knowledge. He is inferior to even a pig or a swine. Li Zhao inadvertently gave Li Si a look of anger and roast. Are you afraid that I might steal your son's wealth? Do you think I'm rare? The eldest young master is Fusu. His mind is full of cliché Confucianism and Taoism. Being his scholar is like living a life of suffering, and he may even be tortured into a fool. How can I make money if I become a fool? What? Upon hearing Li Zhao's voice, Yingzheng gave him a dark glance and said to himself, although the young master is pedantic, you can't say that about him, can you? Moreover, accompanying the eldest son to study in Fusu is even more dangerous than going to the battlefield. Ah! What does it mean? Upon hearing Li Zhao's voice again, Yingzheng's heart sank. Does this mean that his son is violent? Bastard, his son is very kind and completely immune to danger, okay. Not long after Emperor Qin Shi Huang passed away and Fushu was executed, wouldn't I also be implicated? I don't want to get such wealth and honor. What? Upon hearing his innermost thoughts, Yingzheng was shocked and secretly asked what Li Zhao was thinking. Fu Su was executed. How could he be willing to sacrifice the only heir he nurtured? Son, are you cursing me? Just think about it, it's not right. Since this child foresaw that I would pass through a sand dune, it indicates that he has strong predictive ability. Is this true? Yingzheng is not calm anymore. No, I can't agree. I must find a way to escape this place. Soon, Emperor Qin Shi Huang will demote Fu Su to the north to find Meng Tian. If that's the case, I will definitely be forced to follow him to the north, and then I really can't escape. Upon hearing this heartfelt voice, Yingzheng burst into a cold sweat and secretly thought to himself, what is this kid thinking again? He can't possibly demote Fusu. But his strong predictive ability is not true, is it? Yingzheng's heart is a bit broken. What's even more deadly is that after the death of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, Emperor Qin II's tyranny led to a great upheaval and uprisings, resulting in the downfall of the Great Qin Dynasty and the almost extinction of the Zhao family with the surname Ying. Can I tolerate such wealth and prosperity? No, on the contrary, I will definitely fall deeply into it, and I don't even know how I died. Boom! Yingzheng felt a keen wind blowing by his side, and his hands and feet suddenly became cold. Will Qin II implement tyranny after his death? Will it also cause chaos in the world? The downfall of the Great Qin Dynasty. Even exterminated. This is such a terrible thing. He was extremely powerful in the Great Qin Dynasty, and even if there was an uprising, it could not lead to the downfall of the country. The succession of Fusu to the throne is certain, but will Fusu implement tyranny? It's not his personality at all. He has always advocated the rule of Confucianism and Taoism, which is boiling frogs in warm water. How could it be tyranny? Moreover, he is inherently benevolent and will never destroy his own clan. It is better to believe in its existence than to believe in its absence. He must stay by his side to see if he is daydreaming or truly predicting. Of course, it is impossible for him to escape. Your Majesty. Watching Yingzheng's expression turn pale and his face constantly change, Li Si felt a burst of joy in his heart. He thought to himself that His Majesty had believed his words. Isn't this saying that His Majesty wants to change his mind and appoint his son as a book boy? By the way, only his son is qualified to accompany the eldest son. Li Zhao is uneducated and not even qualified to hear the eldest son's fart. Li Zhao looks unsightly, so I'll let him go. As for the book boy, if your majesty likes it, Li Zhan can handle it, Li Si said without blushing or jumping. Upon hearing this, Yingzheng suddenly glanced at Li Si with an unusually cold gaze and said, Li Xiang, is this questioning my ability to recognize people? Buzz. Li Si's mind was shaken, and his palms were covered in cold sweat. His Majesty was doubting his intentions. Puff. Quickly knelt down and begged for mercy. This is their Majesty, when his gaze is cold, no one dares to touch his edge. Alright, let Li Zhao report to Zhangtai Palace tomorrow. Yingzheng's majestic voice rang out, and his words could not be refused. In other words, this is the imperial edict that must be executed, even Li Zhao himself is no exception. Thank you for your support, your majesty. In the end, Li Si had to thank you. No. Thank you, your majesty, for your bestowal. Li Zhao was forced to accept it, feeling extremely helpless. However, this is not a bad thing either. There is still some time before the chaos in the world, and it would be good to make some money with the eldest prince during this period. After the death of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, he immediately ran away. Of course, it would be better to leave the ghost place of the Li family and not have to face that old beast and poisonous woman every day in the future, which seems to be good. After Yingzheng left, the family also dispersed, and Li Sima called Li Zhao to the study. Li Zhao. Uncle has been treating you well these years, hasn't he? I'll give you the best food and the most expensive clothes, which is much stronger than other privileged children. Li Zhao sneered in his heart when he heard Li Si's words. Give him the best food. Is a diet worse than that of a servant good? As for wearing, Li Zhan wore silk and silk, but he was dressed in linen and coarse cloth. If it weren't for meeting Emperor Qin Shi Huang, he wouldn't have been given a brand new garment today. This is the most expensive. Li Zhao was speechless. The reason why you have been recognized by His Majesty as the Grand Prince Scholar, is because of my teachings on you, and I often mention and praise you in front of your Majesty. Li Zhao sneered inwardly, as if hearing the most outrageous words in the world. Teach him. What else can there be besides cursing? It's even more impossible to mention him in front of Emperor Qin Shi Huang. How kind would this guy be? Don't you see him stepping on him in front of Qin Shi Huang? Next to her, Mrs. Li pointed at Li Zhao with her chubby body and said, Li Zhao. You must have a conscience. Your uncle has helped you so much this time, and you can't forget your roots. Your elder brother Zhan is knowledgeable and knowledgeable. Originally, the eldest son was his scholar, but he saw that you were pitiful and gave it to you, giving you great wealth and honor. This is his greatest gift to you. The greatest gift. Li Zhao wanted to laugh. This time, it was a gift personally given to him by Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Although for some unknown reason or related to Li Zhan, they were putting gold on their faces. Also, what can Li Si, this old beast, do to help? It's good not to harm oneself to death. Does this family still have face? However, he still pretended and said, yes, thank you very much for your guidance. Li Zhao dare not forget this great kindness. Not bad. Li Si patted Li Zhao's shoulder with satisfaction. You are still young and have limited knowledge. Being a book boy for the young master is a joke. Remember, when facing your majesty in the young master, you must pretend to be deaf and mute, and not speak recklessly. Of course, whenever you have the opportunity, you should speak well of your brother Zhan, after all, he has great talent. Li Zhao couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. The attention of the family was quite loud, but they still complied. Understood. Just understand, Li Si smiled. Remember, If your majesty asks you how brother Zhao is, you must say that your talent is not half as good as his. Being a county magistrate is definitely not a problem, you know. Don't emphasize, list. I know. Hee. A child can be taught, Uncle's family is clean and doesn't have much money to buy clothes for you. Tomorrow, you can wear these clothes to see your majesty. Li Si pointed to the brand new clothes on Li Zhao's body. No. Li Zhao answered straightforwardly, but his heart was filled with slander. He didn't have the money to buy clothes for him, and he was still honest. Others don't know, but he knows very well that as a prime minister, this Liao is greedy for ink and doesn't know how to figure it out. He may even be able to buy 10 Li mansions. Besides, he took over his father's family wealth. Where did you go? Li Zhao is extremely disgusted with this person. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. The proliferation of jade artifacts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. The proliferation of jade artifacts. The next day, Li Zhao was taken to the back hall of Zhangtai Palace, the temporary resting place for Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Li Zhao was puzzled. He was appointed as the Grand Prince Scholar, how could he be brought here? Shouldn't it be the Grand Prince Hall? But I don't think much about it either. Inviting Li Zhao. Li Zhao kowtowed to His Majesty. After Li Zhao entered, he knelt down and saluted, his eyes flickering, but he unconsciously scanned the main hall. He was extremely shocked for a moment and thought to himself. This is the office of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, grand and generous. It is indeed impressive, but unfortunately, it will be cremated to ashes by Xiang Yu in 3 years. What? Ying Zheng was originally very happy sitting in a high position, but upon hearing such a heartfelt voice, his face immediately turned black, his eyes narrowed slightly, and he secretly said. What's this kid thinking again? Who is Xiang Yu? Is it true that my great Qin will be destroyed in 3 years? Xiang Yu, surname Xiang, is he a descendant of Xiang Yan? This is not the court, there's no need to be polite, get up. Ying Zhengxiang forced out a smile and said. Your Majesty, thank you. Li Zhao stood up. At this moment, a servant walked in and reported, Your Majesty, the eldest prince is here to meet you. Oh. Ying Zheng gave a rare smile, it came in. Li Zhao's heart moved upon hearing this. Grand Prince Fusu, a celebrity. I don't know what he looks like. Should be as handsome as Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Ying Zheng smiled slightly. He liked to listen to this inner activity, but of course, his son, like him, must be handsome. But even if he's handsome, what's wrong? Even as a young master, he can't succeed to the throne. What? Ying Zheng's heart trembled and he thought to himself, why did this kid come again? How could the eldest young master he favored not succeed to the throne? He has put a lot of effort into cultivation. Suddenly, he remembered Li Zhao's voice yesterday. Qin too was tyrannical, and Fusu was not like a tyrannical person. Can it be said that Qin too was not Fusu? Boom. This is a big and deadly matter. How could his painstakingly cultivated heir not succeed to the throne? How can this be? No, this kid must have made random predictions and couldn't make any sense. Ying Zheng comforted himself. After being exiled to the north by Emperor Qin Shi Huang and then executed by Emperor Qin too, what a pitiful person. At this moment, Li Zhao couldn't help but express sympathy for the upcoming appearance of Fusu. But Ying Zheng's face turned pale as he listened, and his heart was extremely desolate. Qin too is really not Fusu, so which of his sons succeeded him and who would have executed Fusu? No, it's definitely not true. We are all loyal, united and friendly, and internal conflicts will not happen. I will never allow such things to happen. Definitely, this kid is just speculating recklessly. Damn it. It took a long time for Ying Zheng to settle down. At this moment, a middle-aged man walked in, dressed in Confucian attire, with an elegant demeanor, and respectfully bowed. Indeed, he is as handsome as his Laozi, Li Zhao praised when he saw Fushu. After some courtesy, Fushu glanced at Li Zhao and was slightly surprised, but quickly turned his head. "Father, I have something to report to you." Yingzheng waved his hand and said, "Whether it's national or family affairs, let's talk about it later. I'll introduce someone to you first. This is Li Zhao, the book boy I found for you." Fushu gave Li Zhao a serious glance and was quite surprised. He secretly thought that his father would personally find a book boy for him. It's rare. It can also be certain that this kid must have outstanding qualities. Li Zhao quickly bowed to Fushu. "No need to be polite." Fushu waved his hand and turned his head eagerly, saying, "Father, this matter is very important for you to decide." Li Zhao sighed inwardly, the eldest prince is really pedantic. Even though Qin Shi Huang had already pushed him away, he was still so persistent. Isn't this to anger Qin Shi Huang? Sure enough, Yingzheng lowered his face and looked extremely angry. However, he waved his hand and said, "Speak up." "Two things, one family and one country." Li Zhaoji also sighed at it. "Two more things. Has Qin Shi Huang already had a seizure? It seems that in the future, when becoming a book boy, one must take good care of him, otherwise it will definitely affect oneself." Upon hearing Li Zhao's voice, Yingzheng nodded slightly and secretly said that Li Zhao was still eye-catching. In fact, his purpose in recruiting Li Zhao was precisely for this. "Father, do you still remember the jade figurines I mentioned to you before? I deliberately made a purchase of a large number in order to earn some subsidies for internal funds, but recently the jade market has been rampant, and the price of jade figurines has dropped sharply. At this price, we..." As he spoke, Fushu's voice became quieter and quieter. Fushu was already filial and faced a situation of empty national treasury and a shortage of funds in the royal family. He immediately shared his father's worries, but he didn't know who suggested and ordered a large number of jade statues. Perhaps it's the celebrity effect. Some manufacturers, seeing the young master targeting the market, produce a large amount of jade, even in a situation of suppressing business, which leads to the proliferation of jade artifacts. At that time, Fushu mentioned this matter to Yingzheng, and it was still the money from internal funds. Yingzheng frowned for a while before asking, "What's your opinion?" "My son believes that selling the jade figurine in hand immediately and stopping losses in a timely manner." "Stop loss in a timely manner." Yingzheng furrowed his brow even deeper and did not respond immediately, his anger growing even stronger. Li Zhao was surprised to hear that in the Qin Dynasty, which prioritizes agriculture and suppresses commerce, there is also a phenomenon of market flooding, and the protagonist is still a narrow-minded young master. It's a bit strange. Wait. Suddenly, Li Zhao seemed to think of something, his eyes narrowed, his head tilted, and he struggled to search for memories of studying the history of the Great Qin. It seems that there were some commercial events related to jade figurines in the late Qin Dynasty. By the way, at that time, the royal family purchased a large number of jade figurines, which led to the proliferation of jade artifacts and a significant depreciation of jade prices, to the point where no one was interested. He. I didn't expect it to be done by Fushu. It seems that he must have been instigated by someone. Being instigated. Yingzheng's face changed dramatically upon hearing his inner voice, and he glared fiercely at Fushu. As for who instigated it, it is not difficult to guess. During the Qin dynasty's period of not suppressing commerce, commercial activities were exceptionally hot, and merchants earned a lot of money, leading to a sharp rise in status. The powerful realized that their status was under threat, and it was only then that the country implemented a policy of emphasizing agriculture and suppressing commerce. Of course, the merchants' unwillingness to deprive them of their vested interests, or the corrupt Fushu being favored by them, is a trigger, right? What? Upon hearing Li Zhao's analysis, Ying Zheng's scalp tingled and his expression became extremely tense, with anger growing stronger. Surprisingly, a master used his son to resist national policies. It's unreasonable. This is definitely a conspiracy. It's against him, against him. Ying Zheng has a very violent heart. But at this moment, it is not a time to care about this issue. What is concerned about is his internal funds. The internal funds are already very empty, and almost all of them are used to buy the jade statue. If he sells it at a loss, it will take the life of the royal family. This is not the main issue, but mainly, with the current market flooding, can his jade statue still be sold? End of this chapter. Chapter 5 provides a thorough analysis. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 provides a thorough analysis. Bastard, you must do everything you can to sell the jade statue. Ying Zheng was about to instruct Fu Su to do everything possible when he suddenly heard Li Zhao's voice. Later, some merchants purchased large quantities of jade at extremely low prices, and coupled with their operations, the jade market unexpectedly experienced shortages, even to the point where some nobles were unable to buy jade during their ceremonies. As a result, they significantly increased the price of jade, even far exceeding the historical highest, as if there was a saying called 10 times a day. What? Tenfold increase in a day. Angry and anxious, Ying Zheng heard his inner voice and his heart bulged, causing his whole body to tremble and his face to turn startled. Is that really the case? Tenfold increase in a day. Did you not deceive me? If it were true, wouldn't that mean that if he held on to the jade statue and didn't sell it until the price skyrocketed before selling it, his internal funds would have multiplied several times? Make a fortune. But this kid is full of nonsense, so I don't know if it's true. Forget it, he's a dead horse and a living horse doctor. So, Ying Zheng's words were forcefully changed by himself. We also need to stock up and wait until a suitable price before selling. Ah. Fu Su's thinking changed a bit and he was momentarily stunned on the spot. Li Zhao was also surprised. Why was Qin Shi Huang so surprised when he spoke? Does he have the ability to predict? Upon hearing Li Zhao's voice, Ying Zheng secretly thought to himself that I have the ability to predict things, he. With a strange smile, he made up his mind and said, that's settled. We'll sell the jade 10 times higher. Ah. Now it was Li Zhao's turn to be surprised. He had a feeling of being seen through by Emperor Qin Shi Huang. No, father, the 3 princes and 9 ministers have already been crazily selling jade artifacts. Shouldn't we also sell them? Our jade figurines are not a small number, and if they fall to the bottom, the internal funds cannot be preserved. Fu Su was anxious. Ying Zheng was impatient and waved his hand, saying, it's their business to sell. I won't do any loss-making business. Upon hearing this, Fu Su wanted to say that if he didn't engage in a loss-making business, he was afraid that he wouldn't even be able to do it. His father's decision made him feel like he was going crazy. This group of jade people seemed to be in danger, and their internal funds were in danger. Father. Fu Su insisted, but was stopped by Ying Zheng. Alright, don't say much, I have my own discretion. One sentence blocked Fu Su. Yes, what else can I do quickly? Ying Zheng wanted to hear his second matter. Fu Su swallowed his saliva and reluctantly gave up his persistence. He felt that this time was over, not only would the internal funds be spent, but his image in the eyes of his father would also be finished. So, he no longer persisted. If you really persist, you may not have the chance to say the second thing. He still knows the character of the father emperor. Father, since the implementation of the policy of suppressing commerce in the Great Qin Dynasty, the scope of commercial activities has been greatly reduced, the industry has been sluggish, and merchants have suffered unbearable hardships. My son believes that the policy of suppressing commerce should be immediately abolished to give the people a stable life. What are you saying? Ying Zheng's face changed dramatically, and he suddenly became cold. He shook his sleeves and shouted, emphasizing agriculture and suppressing commerce is a national policy. It is impossible, absolutely impossible to ban it. I won't bring up this matter again. Father. Fu Su knelt down and said with great sorrow, I have observed that Xianyang city is no longer bustling, handicrafts are withering, and vendors are going bankrupt and wandering on the streets. All of this is due to the suppression of commerce. I hope father thinks twice. You, Yingzheng, were burning with anger and almost ready to explode. Li Zhaozhi was also sweating for Fusu and thought to himself, it seems that Fusu has been seduced by those unscrupulous merchants, and even if he becomes a gun dealer, he is not aware of it. Suppressing business is not a long-term solution, but national policies are not something that can be changed just by changing them. Upon hearing Li Zhao's voice, Yingzheng was shocked and then furious. He agreed with Li Zhao's idea, and Fusu must have been instigated by unscrupulous businessmen. Otherwise, with his personality, he would not have said such a thing. He complained that the people of Fushu were already middle-aged and couldn't see through some clues, but instead this kid saw the key to the problem. His heart was cold, and his Fusu was crooked by someone. With a sudden angry glance at Li Zhao and a movement in his heart, he asked, Li Zhao, what should we do about this matter? Li Zhao was taken aback for a moment. He didn't expect Qin Shi Huang to ask him for his opinion. It seemed that he was only a 17-year-old child and not enough to have his own opinions. Your Majesty, my humble position is still young, and I know nothing about national politics. I dare not say much. Yingzheng sighed and thought to himself, too. He is only in his teens, and at this age, other children of influential figures are still playing. He should be no exception, how could he know about the court? It seems that the reason why he knew that Fusu was being bewitched was probably due to his ability to foresee. I shouldn't have asked him. Li Zhao paused for a moment and continued cautiously, but my elder brother Zhan is outstanding, twice as talented as me. Your Majesty, can you ask him? You're talking nonsense. When it comes to Li Zhan, Yingzheng's body feels numb and nauseous. Is he outstanding in his ability to live a decadent life and plagiarize books and poetry? That's strange. What's wrong with this kid? He even made Li Zhan disgust me. Yingzheng was slandered. At the next moment, Li Zhao's inner thoughts spread again. Uncle had warned me not to say anything when His Majesty asked, but to speak more of Brother Zhan and give him good words. Uncle, I did it. You. Yingzheng had a black line on his head, secretly cursing Li Si, this bastard, and mentioning his son. Is he not sure what his son is? Poor child. Being bullied by Li Si, I dare not even speak. For a moment, Yingzheng felt sympathy. However, on the other hand, Fusu's temperament is too impatient, and he speaks with only one mind and one mind. How dare he bring up such a thing? Oh. Li Zhao's voice was once again heard, and Yingzheng's heart moved upon hearing it. Firstly, the suppression of commerce is due to the national conditions. Currently, the Great Qin urgently needs to consolidate its political power and crack down on the remaining evils of the 6 countries. It is necessary to suppress commerce, otherwise the prosperity of commerce will greatly restrict the rule of the country. This is not a good thing for the country, but mainly because if merchants are mixed with the remaining evils of the 6 countries, a move to give them power will inevitably lead to disputes. Yingzheng was surprised to hear this, and the explanation was very accurate. Of course, banning and suppressing commerce is also not impossible. Yingzheng's eyes lit up, and these words were spoken in his heart. As the Emperor of the Great Qin, he was well aware of the events that occurred within the country. Before the unification of the 6 kingdoms, commerce flourished everywhere, but once the policy of suppressing commerce was implemented, as Fu Su said, it did wither. For a country, it was not a good thing, but it was not easy to ban it. For this, he has been having a headache. However, First of all, we need to develop agriculture. As the saying goes, agriculture is the foundation of all industries. If the people cannot eat enough and talk about commerce, it is not something that few people hold tightly. When agriculture reaches a certain level of development, which means that everyone can eat enough and have surplus grain, commerce can emerge. This is also the knowledge that Li Zhao knew when studying history and economics in his previous life. The importance of agriculture is evident, but even though it has developed to a certain extent, it still lags behind other countries. This indicates that developing agriculture is only the first step, and commerce is the key. Does it make sense? Upon hearing his thoughts, Yingzheng nodded nervously, sometimes deep in thought, sometimes with a smile, and finally frowned. This kid is very good, but the key is how to develop agriculture. These are the people, the land is limited, and the annual grain production is only so much. Apart from necessary taxes and land rent, there is not much left for the people, and it is difficult for the whole family to have enough to eat. He thought about reducing taxes on this issue, but after the tax reduction, he was unable to maintain national operations, which was not worth the loss. Agriculture needs to develop to provide surplus food for the people, it's difficult. At this moment, Li Zhao's voice rose again. Secondly, it is absolutely unacceptable for the powerful to ban the suppression of commerce at once, as it threatens their status. The powerful maintain national rule, and even if Emperor Qin Shi Huang wants to ban it, he must consider it again and again. Boom! Upon hearing Li Zhao's analysis, Yingzheng's heart was filled with shock, which could not be calmed for a long time. Just poke him in the heart. At a young age, I was able to analyze things very well and accurately. This son is remarkable, yes, he has also considered banning and suppressing business, but he has considered many things and faced many problems, so often this idea can only come to mind and dare not be brought up. At this moment, Li Zhao said in his heart that he had a feeling of pleasure. Whether it's the wealthy or the common people, they can't afford the impact of commerce nowadays. First of all, in agriculture, most of the land is controlled by the wealthy or landlords, and there are millions of people, but very few landowners. However, they are the ones who cultivate the land, resulting in very little return even if they work hard to cultivate it. How can they survive if business really thrives? So solving the problem of food and clothing is the key. As for the elites, it goes without saying. Before reunification, the powerful paid a lot for the country, and now it is time to sit back and enjoy the benefits. How can we allow merchants to surpass them? For a moment, Yingzheng felt a bit frustrated. When someone else raised his son, he also raised him. The other person's son was outstanding, but what about his son? It's really disappointing to be at an age where one can't distinguish the current situation and is still influenced by others. Suddenly, Yingzheng turned around to look at Li Zhao, feeling particularly surprised. Isn't this kid saying he doesn't understand? Why do you know everything? And you analyzed it so thoroughly. Hee hee. Let him pretend. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. More Ideal Strategies. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. More Ideal Strategies. Seeing his father's face changing and uncertain, while Li Zhao looked very aggrieved, Fu Su couldn't bear to see it anymore. He bowed to Yingzheng and said, "Father, Li Zhao rarely interacts with national politics. I don't think I should make things difficult for him." Don't make things difficult for him. Yingzheng stood up from his high position with a thought-provoking smile in his eyes, walked slowly, and came to Li Zhao's side, looking at him with great interest. Li Zhao was taken aback and secretly asked what Qin Shi Huang was going to do. Did he say something wrong? No. He said it very seriously. There is absolutely no intention of offending the ancestral dragon. However, Yingzheng only looked around for a moment, then turned his face and gave a faint smile, muttering to himself. You didn't say anything wrong, and you said it very correctly, but you shouldn't deceive me. Didn't you say you don't understand anything? How to analyze so thoroughly? Yeah. It seems like it's making things difficult for him. I scared the baby to death. Li Zhao listened to Ying Zheng's words and felt relieved, thinking it was so dangerous. The eerie smile of Emperor Qin Shi Huang was too frightening. Ying Zheng restrained his smile and stared closely at Fusu, his attitude softened a lot. This has always been his son, who will inherit the great authority in the future, and blindly rejecting it is not conducive to his growth. Since he raised this question, I believe he has also considered countermeasures. Ying Zheng thought this way and asked Fu Su, since you propose to ban and suppress commerce, do you have a good plan? Upon hearing this, Fu Su was delighted and quickly said, my son has come up with a solution. Our suppression of commerce in the Great Qin Dynasty was nothing more than to protect the people who worked day and night, so that they could not have enough food, clothing, or be displaced. Ying Zheng nodded slightly as he listened. It seemed that his Fu Su was not as cliché as he had imagined, but rather had some ideas. He didn't know what the next strategy would be. If we can make food abundant, won't this problem be easily solved? Yes, Ying Zheng nodded, and Li Zhao also nodded. Suddenly, Li Zhao had an opinion that this young master was not as Confucian as recorded in historical records, and some issues were still well understood. How to make food abundant? Ying Zheng raised the main question. Fusu shrugged his shoulders, as if he had a plan in mind. Father, my courtiers have investigated and found that the main grains in the Great Qin Dynasty are millet, wheat, rice, etc. Planting millet and wheat in the Guangzhou region, which ripens every 6 months, is considered acceptable. However, why can't the people eat enough? The reason is that our land in the Great Qin Dynasty is insufficient, so we can cultivate more land and increase the grain yield, isn't it? Ying Zheng didn't answer or react much, and fell into contemplation. Li Zhao pursed his lips and thought to himself, this is the truth, but what's the difference between it and adding to the snake's feet? The Great Qin had only 20 million people, and because of heavy agriculture, almost all the people were farming. Even if more land was opened up, no one would be able to farm it. The problem now is that the population is small and it is not suitable to cultivate more land. Of course, if efforts can be made to increase the yield per mu, it may be a solution. Upon hearing Li Zhao's voice, Ying Zheng couldn't help but nod. Yes, the population of the Great Qin was limited, and land reclamation could not solve the problem. This is also the problem he has been thinking about. Increasing the yield per mu is the right way, but increasing it is not easy to talk about. Qin has a department dedicated to researching grain production, but since unification, it has been impossible to solve this problem, even if it is to increase production slightly. Fusu was not aware of his father's thoughts. When he saw his father nod, he was overjoyed and agreed with his views. You should know that he has put forward many opinions, all of which were reprimanded and not adopted, but today he made an exception. Of course, his idea has been investigated from multiple sources and combined with the opinions of many great scholars. It can be said that it is a foolproof solution, and it is reasonable for his father to agree. So he continued, this is one of them. Secondly, I heard that Nanhai County has a hot climate and mainly grows rice, which can be harvested twice a year. Really? Ying Zheng heard it and his eyes lit up. He quickly asked. Since reunification, he has been busy with national politics and rarely pays attention to regional issues. Of course. Fusu appeared very proud. As long as we vigorously develop Nanhai County, the grain production will definitely increase. By then, we can ensure that everyone has enough to eat, and that everyone loves us, the Great Qin. Isn't it possible for us to rule the Great Qin for generations to come? Okay, that's a good idea. Ying Zheng's eyebrows relaxed and he felt like he could see the moon shining through the clouds. He immediately took action. Fusu, I'll let you go with this matter. Just as Ku was about to ask Fusu to handle it, he suddenly heard Li Zhao's voice. It's true that there are 2 crops a year in Nanhai County, as modern people almost know, but the problem is the quantity. Fusu only thinks about the planting amount, but does not consider the yield per mu. What's the difference between this and in the Guangzhong area? Yingzheng furrowed his brow upon hearing this. It seemed that there were only so many laborers in Nanhai County, and someone had to go and cultivate the land to cultivate it. Still treating the symptoms rather than the root cause. I was too happy just now and didn't think about this level. We still need to solve the problem of yield per mu. Yingzheng sighed. As soon as Father Emperor was about to agree, he paused the next moment. Fu Su was puzzled and asked cautiously, Father Emperor, what do you mean? Yingzheng straightened his face and asked, your suggestion is good, but have you ever thought about who will plant it? You wouldn't say let the people plant it. They are also planting land themselves, and with the same workload, do you think the yield per mu can be increased? Fu Su squinted her eyes and felt a flurry. Yes. How could he not have thought of this problem? With no change in manpower, the yield per mu could not be increased, and even developing Nanhai County would be in vain. This issue has entered a dead end. Actually, this problem is not difficult to solve. Isn't there a 2 million strong army in Qin? Coincidentally, there are 500,000 troops stationed in Vietnam, so let the soldiers cultivate and fight. Isn't that enough? Li Zhaoxin pondered. In history, there was indeed a theory of agricultural warfare in the Great Qin Dynasty, but Li Zhao couldn't understand why Yingzheng and Fu Su were still struggling with this issue for so long. But soon I realized that perhaps the farming battle had not yet begun. Farming war. Upon hearing Li Zhao's voice, Yingzheng raised his eyebrows and fiercely patted his chest, secretly saying, yes, let the soldiers cultivate and fight at the same time. That is to say, when a war breaks out, go to war, and when it stops, farm, and have the best of both worlds. This method is wonderful. For a moment, Yingzheng glanced at Li Zhao more and saw that he was still in a state of confusion. His anger couldn't be dispelled. Although it was a prime minister's suggestion, he pretended to know nothing and pretended to be so similar. No one in the world is worth it. This son, hey. Yingzheng was both angry and laughing. Of course, this is not the most ideal solution yet. It would be even better if we could improve the quality of the seeds. Isn't it the most ideal yet? Yingzheng seemed to have heard the most incredible voice of his heart. In the battle of farming, he could predict that it would definitely solve the problem of food shortage and even make the national road prosperous. He actually said it's not the most ideal solution yet. Could it be? End of this chapter. Chapter 7 was once again sealed. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 was once again sealed. Yingzheng's heartbeat started to beat. In the next moment, he gave Li Zhao a strange glance and whispered, you like to pretend, don't you? Let you pretend in terror. Accidentally asked, do you have a good plan to solve the problem of yield per mu, kid? Li Zhaolu looked embarrassed and quickly said, the kid doesn't understand anything and doesn't have a good plan. However, your majesty can ask Brother Zhan, he may have a good plan. Ask you a question, Yingzheng really wants to curse out loud and make you find an excuse to disgust me with that guy. Suddenly, his face turned terrifying and he shouted sternly, someone, take this kid and chop him down. Upon hearing this, Li Zhao's face changed in shock, instantly turning pale. He was indeed a companion to the emperor like a tiger, and if he was not careful, he would die. He didn't say anything wrong, how could he use such terrifying means? Cut it off. He's only 17 years old. Father, absolutely not. Li Zhao is still young and immature. What good plan is there? Please let him go. Fu Su was kind and was startled when he saw Yingzheng giving such an order, so he quickly persuaded. Yingzheng ignored and tilted his head. Obedience. The two guards next to him immediately walked over, ready to take Li Zhao. Slow down, Your Majesty. I have a good plan for my humble position. He. With a proud smile, Yingzheng withdrew from the guard and secretly said, "It's still a special method to make the boy speak up. It should have been like this long ago. Why do I have to resort to violence? In fact, there are special methods to increase grain yield per mu in humble positions, and it can also be harvested twice a year in the Guangzhou area," Li Zhao quickly said with a stiff face. "I can't do it without saying it. If you keep it hidden, his head will be moving. The companion cannot be joking. It's not that he's talking nonsense. The rice varieties given to him by the system are all special varieties. Not to mention Zhanqing rice and Huanghua rice, they are hybrid rice varieties. But Grandpa Yuan has devoted his whole life to it. If he guesses correctly, the hybrid rice given by the system is the most advanced and good variety, which can ripen twice a year in the Guangzhou area. Moreover, according to the yield of hybrid rice in previous generations, the yield per mu can reach over 1,000 kilograms, which is only 1 or 2 stones compared to the yield per mu in Daqin. At most, it does not exceed 3 stones, which is simply insignificant, and the quantity is more than 10 times that of Daqin. If there were no natural or man-made disasters, it would not be a problem for the people to have enough food and clothing in less than 2 years if rice were popularized like this. Of course, at this moment when Emperor Qin Shi Huang learned about rice, he would definitely contribute it. Fortunately, the system provided 3 types of seeds, and it was impossible for him to hand over hybrid rice. However, the yield of Zhanqing rice per mu was too low and the maturity period was too long, which was not suitable. Only yellow flowers occupied it. Huanghua accounts for 2 harvests a year, with a yield of over 10 stones per mu, which is much stronger than the yield of this era, just enough to cope with Emperor Qin Shi Huang, while hybrid rice, it can become a tool for making money. 2 crops a year. Is this wheat? Yingzheng's eyes lit up and he quickly asked. Li Zhao shook his head and said, "No, it's rice, the main crop in Nanhai County. Rice. 2 harvests a year. If it's in Nanhai County, it can be 4 harvests. Good thing." Yingzheng thought to himself, his eyes shining brightly. Although rice is not a staple food in the Guangzhou region, isn't it also a grain? Faced with people who are unable to eat enough, food is undoubtedly a life-saving straw, regardless of whether it is a staple food. And it's still 4 ripe. You should know that rice in the Guangzhou region only ripens once a year. Li Zhao thinks that Yingzheng is too imaginative. It's already good to cook 2 dishes a year, but he still wants 4 dishes. However, in Nanhai County, you should be able to get triple cooked, which is also a big concept. No, it should be possible to achieve 3 ripe in Nanhai County. Oh. Yingzheng was slightly disappointed, but it was only for a moment. How about the yield per mu? This is his biggest concern. Li Zhao paused for a moment. If he still dared to lie, he just didn't want his head anymore. There should be 8 stones, he said, as little as possible. If calculated based on the average level in previous lives, Huanghua should account for 10 stones per mu of yield, so he deliberately reduced it by 2 stones. Because although he has been reborn for 17 years, he has never planted land before. If the soil quality of the Great Qin is not up to standard, or if it is due to other reasons that it cannot meet the requirements, then his head will really land. This is bullying you. What? Yingzheng trembled all over, his eyes widened and his pupils quickly contracted. 8 stones. What concept is that? You should know that the yield of rice per mu in the Guangzhou area is only about 1 or 2 stones, with a maximum of only 3 stones, while the yield of 8 stones has increased by 3 or 4 times. 4 times the yield per mu means that in just a few days, 20 million people can live, which means that the people don't have to go hungry and can live a worry-free life. It means that the country can maintain long-term peace and stability, and all problems can be easily solved. This is great news. Even if we conquer the 6 countries, we are not as excited as we are now. Really? Yingzheng shook his head, still unable to believe it. Take it seriously. Li Zhao nodded affirmatively. However, his heart howled bitterly. Looking at the eyes of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, his dream of becoming rich was a bit uncertain. Will the ancestral dragon confiscate his seeds? Haha. Alright. Haha. Yingzheng burst out laughing out of nowhere. Fusu kept listening and frowned upon hearing such news, but still agreed. Congratulations to my father. With the yield per mu of 8 stones, we will be as stable as Mount Tai. Congratulations. Hee. Yingzheng rarely agreed with Fu Su's words. Li Zhao has been granted the title of Xiaoniai, and I will appoint you as the Xiaoniai, who is in charge of pre-arranged farming. You can go to court at an affordable price and be conferred the title of first-class duke. I will bestow upon you 1,000 acres of fertile land and a mansion in the outskirts of Xianyang, with a fief of 5 yuan. From now on, make sure to use your special method of farming and grow rice that yields 8 stones per mu. The Great Qin had officials in charge of agriculture, Xiaoniai, a relatively small royal private position. The Great Qin had a higher level of nobility, originally designed specifically for military achievements, but after unification, there were very few battles and few people were awarded it. Later, it gradually evolved into a reward for those who made contributions. It is divided into 20 levels, with the first level being the lowest level. However, even if it is the lowest level, it is still a title, and its status is not comparable to ordinary people. It also has a salary to receive, which is a coveted existence for many people. 1,000 acres of fertile land is even more so. If it weren't for the wealthy or landlords, no one could have so much fertile land. The upper coin is gold, 1 E is 20 taels, and 5 E is 100 taels of gold, which is not a small amount. Ah! Li Zhao was stunned for a moment, before he could react from his restless state. The reward is a bit generous. Qin Shi Huang was really generous. He didn't have much credit for it, so he rewarded so many things. The next moment, he thought to himself. I was just afraid of death to say something, and I received such a reward. It's a bit of a joke. Qin Shi Huang is not afraid of me telling lies. Upon hearing his thoughts, Yingzheng smiled inwardly. I knew you were afraid, otherwise how could you dig out your talents? As for child's play. How about having a children's play with you? In fact, it's not just a child's play by Yingzheng. He has thought a lot about improving crop yields, but he can't come up with any good solutions. After Li Zhao's words, he decided to take a gamble. Of course, he is also confident that he has this chance. From Li Zhao's various performances, it can be seen that he is not a mediocre person. If he could really grow grain that yields 8 stones per mu, this effort would be worth it. He has such courage. From today on, you don't have to wait by the eldest son's side. Plant your land well. I hope to see you grow 8 stones of grain per mu in 6 months. Go ahead. Although Yingzheng said with a smile, he revealed one thing in his words. He is serious. If Li Zhao dares to deceive, the consequences will be very serious. Li Zhao was also aware of this. He didn't know whether he was happy or heavy. After giving thanks, he left. Father, you. Fu Su later realized and hesitated at the corner of his mouth. I already understand in my heart that just now my father did not intend to execute Li Zhao, it was just a threatening statement. It was just a matter of producing 8 stones per mu. Is it really okay? Yingzheng waved his hand and spoke slowly, I know what you're going to say. There are some things that really need to be fought for in order to have a chance. Otherwise, stepping on the ground will only lead to destruction. Do you understand? Of course, Fusu understood, otherwise he wouldn't have reported the matter of suppressing commerce against the anger of his father. He's just a teenager, can he really do it? Fusu was puzzled. Ingzheng patted Fu Su's shoulder with a rare smile and said, "You underestimate him too much, or rather you don't understand him." Understand? Fusu was a bit confused. He had only been in contact with Li Zhao for less than an hour, so how could he understand him? It seems that Father Huang has not had much contact with him, so how could he understand? Fusu, immediately send me a secret message to Nanhai County, ordering Ren Xiao and Zhao Tua to lead a 500,000-strong army to cultivate and fight in the South China Sea, and to open up good farmland for me to use later. Ren Xiao and Zhao Tua were the great generals stationed in Vietnam. No. Fusu was overjoyed and took orders to leave. This secret edict is very obvious. It is that the Father Emperor accepted his suggestion and opened up Nanhai County, proving that the Father Emperor still recognized him, but the manpower problem has not been solved yet. Farming war. He immediately thought of this word, and suddenly his eyes lit up. Farming and war were indeed good ideas, how could he not have thought of it? My father is truly worthy of being his father. He couldn't believe that. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Requesting Li Zhao from Li Mansion to accept the order. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Requesting Li Zhao from Li Mansion to accept the order. Returning to the Li Mansion, Li Zhao was immediately called to the study by Li Si, and a poisonous woman was also among them. "Zhao, what did your Majesty say to you today?" asked Li Si. Li Zhao thought for a moment, but didn't hide anything. "Your Majesty asked me about farming." "What did you say?" "I said I'm still young and don't understand anything." "That's right." Li Si stroked his not long beard with satisfaction and repeatedly reminded him, "Remember, your talent is average, and you can't answer anything your Majesty asks. Otherwise, it will take minutes for someone to make your Majesty unhappy and fall to the ground." Li Zhao chuckled inwardly. "That sounds so good. Your Majesty was angry today, why didn't you see my head fall to the ground? Are you afraid that I might compete with Li Zhan?" "Uncle taught me a lesson," Li Zhao said sincerely. "A child can be taught." Li Si smiled. "Did you mention genre?" The poisonous woman next to her showed no interest in their topic and quickly pulled Li Zhao aside, asking urgently. "Yes, as per your instructions, I said Zhang Ji's talent is twice that of mine, and he knows farming very well." "Really?" The poisonous woman was also satisfied and smiled. "Of course, my genre knows everything about farming. Without a doubt, he has grown a sapling before." "Has your Majesty conferred the title of genre official?" Li Zhao answered truthfully, "Your Majesty did not answer." Of course, Emperor Qin Shi Huang would not answer. When he heard the words Zhanggu, his face immediately changed. He must have been disgusted. It is definitely impossible to be granted official titles. This poisonous woman takes her thoughts for granted. No answer. That means there's no official title. The poisonous woman's face turned ugly upon hearing this, even becoming vicious and cursing without warning. "Li Zhao, you dare to lie. You must not have mentioned Jean Eyre in front of His Majesty, otherwise with Jean Eyre's agricultural talent, why wouldn't your Majesty not be appointed as an official? At least you have to be appointed as a miser." "No, the position of miser is too small, at least it must be a minor official. You are such an ungrateful person who eats from the inside out, gets rich and prosperous on your own, but leaves your elder brother Jean aside. You must understand that over the years, you have been cultivated by our Li family and have been appreciated by His Majesty. You are so kind that you don't care about your elder brother Jean at all, do you? I really raised you for free." Holy crap! Li Zhao cursed silently, feeling speechless in his heart. The Li family trained me. When did it happen? Do you still want me to be appreciated? Your Majesty appreciates that I have a woolen relationship with your Li family. Is there anything else that Li Zhao can do about farming? Nonsense, he doesn't even know what a plow is. Although I said good things for Brother Zhao, His Majesty ignored me. What can I do? Of course, even if I have a way, I won't sincerely recommend him. Your family is all poisonous, do you take me seriously? Why, you're too scared to speak. Are you wronged? You're just a white-eyed wolf. The poisonous woman trembled with anger when she saw Li Zhao not speaking. If you eat inside and out, get out of here right away. The Li family doesn't raise rebellious bones. Get lost, do I have a hard time staying at your house? Li Zhaoshe couldn't bear the words of this poisonous woman. Previously, I endured their malice because I had no one to rely on, but now that I have gained the appreciation of your majesty and have been granted official titles, do I still need them? There's no need for that anymore. Starting from today, he's a nobleman, and he can't live without dignity. So, he turned his head and walked away. You, how dare you talk back, back. The poisonous woman roared like a tiger, angry, and immediately ordered her servants, break his leg for me. Oh, I only entered the palace once and treated myself like a character. There's no way. The servant walked over with a majestic demeanor, ready to challenge Li Zhao. Stop it. Li Si quickly stopped the servant and sternly scolded, what a woman does, what a woman does. Don't cause trouble for me. The poisonous woman couldn't help but curse and said, Master, what are you trying to stop me from doing? Such a villain should be taught a lesson. Teach him a lesson. Li Si glared at the poisonous woman. I would like to teach him a lesson, but he is the one who has been favored by His Majesty. Teach him a lesson, you dare to teach His Majesty. It's extremely foolish. The more Li Si spoke, the quieter his voice became. The poisonous woman hesitated and said, but we can't let him be so arrogant. Arrogant. He. Don't forget that I am the Prime Minister. Killing a deceased son is not easy. He. You have a conscience. Later, Li Si frowned and muttered to himself, it's strange that your majesty should ask him about farming. Indeed, although the Great Qin Dynasty emphasized agriculture, His Majesty rarely discussed agriculture in court. However, today he even mentioned it and asked Li Zhao, which is very puzzling. This message is crucial. What's strange about this? Isn't it obvious? It must be your majesty who knew that we Zhao was good at farming, so he hinted to that bastard with a stern expression. The meaning was very obvious, your majesty was interested in us Zhao and wanted to appoint him as an official. Official title. Li Si still couldn't figure it out. Definitely. The poisonous woman patted her chest, I'm afraid your majesty's decree is on the way. The more the poisonous woman thought about it, the more she felt this way, and for a moment she became happy. What kind of official must he be? He must be the Xiaonai, only Xiaonai can meet Zhao's identity. While speaking, suddenly someone came to report, excitedly. Young master, madam, what a joyful occasion. Someone has arrived in the palace. A happy event. The poisonous woman's thick eyelids widened and her eyebrows lit up with excitement. I'll just say it. It must be an edict coming, and I'll be in theft, Zhao. So she ran out excitedly. Li Si looked bewildered and secretly asked, could it be a decree? He didn't feel right, but he couldn't figure out where it was wrong, but the edict came and he had to go out and listen to it. At this moment, in the lobby of the Li mansion, the attendants were already holding bamboo rolls in both hands and standing happily. As soon as they saw Li Si, they immediately nodded and bowed, extremely eager. Li Xiang, congratulations. The talents of Li mansion are indeed extraordinary, everyone is a talented person. Sure enough. The poisonous woman was overjoyed and couldn't help but speak, forgetting even the etiquette. Of course, everyone in my family is talented. Before finishing speaking, Li Si glared back. Li Si quickly clasped his fists and apologized, my wife doesn't understand etiquette, I understand. The attendant smiled and said nonchalantly, it's okay, it's okay. Li Xiang has good guidance, and everyone in the mansion is outstanding. First, a governor of Sanchuan will be appointed, and then a young man will be appointed. It's not easy. Xiaoniai. Indeed, Xiaoniai, The poisonous woman forgot her etiquette again and burst into laughter alone. Hee hee. The attendant did not show any displeasure, but instead agreed. Not only was it as simple as Xiaoniai, but he was also appointed as a first-level official, granted 1,000 acres of land, and rewarded with 5 coins. What? Li Si, who had always been majestic, was also stunned. His son was granted a title and even 1,000 acres of land. How could it feel so unreal? He didn't have any achievements. The title was originally established for military achievements, but after unifying the 6 kingdoms, there were very few wars, so the title was not rewarded. Later, it evolved into a reward for those who had made achievements. The poison woman didn't think so much. First, she was overjoyed, and then she furrowed her brows, noticeably dissatisfied. What, with my genre's talent, is he only a first-class official? 1,000 acres of land. No, at least he needs a level 5 doctor. He also needs 10,000 acres of land, otherwise he will be humiliated. The more you say it, the more it seems natural. Upon hearing this, the attendant was bewildered and thought to herself, this woman really doesn't care. Can she question your Majesty's reward? But soon he ignored it and a sharp voice came out. Please ask Li Zhao from Li Mansion to take the order. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Nitrogen, Phosphorus, and Potassium Fertilizers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Nitrogen, Phosphorus, and Potassium Fertilizers, Li Zhao. The poisonous woman couldn't understand what was going on with her son's posthumous appointment with Li Zhao, so she glared at the attendant and said displeasantly, you made a mistake. My son's name is not Li Zhao, but Li Zhan. The attendant didn't want to talk and continued to shout, please ask Li Zhao from Li Mansion to take the order. The poisonous woman became even angrier and didn't care about Li Si's glare. She impatiently said, it said that it's not Li Zhao. That ungrateful thing was kicked out of the house by me long ago. He is no longer a member of my Li family. Nonsense. Li Si realized something was wrong and slapped the poisonous woman in the face, pushing her aside. He sorted through his thoughts and said, Grandpa, my wife is not sensible. Don't take it amiss. Li Zhao is in the mansion, and I will send someone to call him. The poisonous woman covered her face and for some reason, Li Si slapped her in the face. Upon hearing, Li Zhao, her anger grew stronger and her words couldn't help but burst out, Li Zhao is not from my Li family. What is your name? Oh. The attendant reacted and understood that Li Zhao was not recognized by them and was even kicked out of the Li mansion. How can this be done? Li Zhao is the person that your Majesty is interested in, and he has been conferred a title. The Li family wants to oppose your Majesty. For a moment, his expression was slightly displeased, his face became solid, and his tone became sinister. Li Xiang, it's not my fault to remind you that Li Zhao is someone your Majesty admires. Don't do anything absurd in your Li family, he said. One sentence is enough to explain everything. Well, since Li Zhao is not here, let's pretend I haven't been. Let's go to the suburban estate. The attendant gave a cold glance at the poisonous woman and then led them away. Gong, Shangong. Li Si's face changed abruptly, trying to persuade him to stay, but he couldn't find a word. Shangong Gong is a servant of His Majesty, second only to Zhao Gao in status. Even as the Prime Minister, he is not easy to offend. The poisonous woman is in a hurry. Her son's decree has not been received yet, so this tusk cannot leave. Quickly dragging his plump body, he rushed forward like a big bear. Grandpa, my son Li Zhan is at the mansion. You can't leave. He hasn't received the decree yet. Shut up. Li Si's eyes had already ignited, and he angrily pulled the poison woman back. Unfortunately, the poison woman's body was too large for him to move. The attendant looked back and sneered. Li Zhan received the edict. He. It seems that you have made a mistake. The person bestowed by your majesty is not Li Zhan, but Li Zhao. Since you have already driven Li Zhao out of your house, the edict is certainly not from your Li mansion. Let's take it easy. Take it easy, it's thought-provoking. Li Si frowned and his face looked strange. After the words were finished, the attendant led the person away. What? It's not my son's gift, it's that bastard. How could it be? How could he be bestowed with virtue? Entangled for so long, willing to make my father-in-law unhappy, it turns out it's not his son. At this moment, the poisonous woman suddenly felt a blackout before her eyes and almost fainted. You. If you care, it's chaotic. Li Si sighed helplessly. Li Zhao was unaware of what had happened in the Li mansion. At this moment, on the outskirts of Xianying City, under the leadership of another palace attendant, Li Zhao finally arrived at the place where he was rewarded. Chang'an Township has a flat area and vast territory, but the soil quality is difficult to describe. The undulating terrain alone, with its yellow and sparse vegetation, is uninteresting. Li Xiaonai, this is your fiefdom, that's the manor. The attendant pointed to the flat area ahead. Not far away was a dilapidated manor, covering his mouth and laughing uncontrollably. Li Zhao didn't respond and looked ahead, feeling a surge of longing in his heart. This is about to be his first entrepreneurial base since his rebirth. He wants to achieve his grand goal from here. No, I should have earned my first bucket of gold here, and then immediately left when Qin Shi Huang's fifth eastward tour began. He had already thought about it. After the death of Emperor Qin Shi Huang, the world was in chaos and the six kingdoms were divided. He quickly escaped and went to Vietnam. War rarely brings disaster to Vietnam, so it should be a good place, and the climate is suitable, making it a good place to grow hybrid rice. Moreover, when the war broke out, he also took advantage of it to make a fortune, such as building an airplane and cannons. There must be many people vying to buy them. Li Zhao thought it was very beautiful, but soon felt disheartened. Aircraft and cannons. He doesn't have the ability to create it yet. God bless him. Others have been reborn from ancient times with great craftsmanship, not to mention airplanes and cannons. They can even build aircraft carriers, but they know nothing about it. He seems to be the most incompetent in the army of rebirth, or his brain reserves are not enough. Never mind, with hybrid rice, one should also be able to achieve great things. Li Zhao comforted himself, but the next moment, his heart sank. He is numb and full of ambition, but he works for Emperor Qin Shi Huang and has achieved a great success. Looking at the dilapidated estate again, I couldn't help but feel angry. Qin Shi Huang is also too stingy. The sealed estate was so dilapidated, with wooden houses scattered in a row, the threshold filled with weeds, and although the yard was wide, it was very desolate. Also, what is that? It's just a mouse running around everywhere. Is this a place where people live? Xiaonai, this is the servant bestowed upon you by your majesty. Just order them to tidy up and tidy up. The attendant couldn't help but cover his mouth, but pointed to about 10 people behind him. Li Zhao suppressed his dissatisfaction and secretly said that it was okay. Although the manner was not very good, Qin Shi Huang was still sensible and gave him a servant. Looking back, my face turned pale with iron. Nima, this is also a servant. Although there are many people, they are as thin as firewood and their faces are like the color of vegetables. From a distance, they look like 10 or so bamboo poles stuck there. He is a farmer. Can these things be given to him for work? Is it difficult to let oneself do it? It's not possible. Although I came from a rural area in my previous life and did a lot of agricultural work, I was born in the Li family in this life and have never been to the countryside, so I am no longer accustomed to it. Qin Shi Huang, some mischievous father. I'm still at home. Forget it, isn't it just the place to live? It's still possible to stay here after tidying up, and it won't last long. Li Zhao comforted himself and concluded in his heart that he would leave immediately when Emperor Qin Shi Huang was on his tour to the east. Thinking of 1,000 acres of fertile land, he asked, "Grandpa, may I ask where my 1,000 acres of fertile land are?" The attendant couldn't help but cover his mouth and pointed to his eyes as he listened. "Isn't that right? Is this also a good field?" Li Zhao followed the attendant's gaze and fell on the field in front of him, his heart racing over 1,000 grass mud horses. This is a fertile land, clearly on the Lus Plateau. Although there is a ditch next to it, and the water flows loudly, the soil is yellow, indicating exceptional poverty. Based on his previous experience in farming, this place is not suitable for growing rice. Mama, Qin Shi Huang is no longer a father of deceit, but a child of deceit. How can he produce 8 stones per mu with such a good field? Isn't it clear that he wants to be beheaded? Grandpa, can you exchange it for a better one? Li Zhao asked softly. The attendant continued to cover his mouth and put on a deep expression, muttering, "No, your majesty has said so." Therefore, the great mission of the heavenly generals is also important, so we must first work hard on our hearts and minds. Li Zhao heard of his aversion to cold and secretly asked, "Is the eunuch of the Great Qin so powerful? Do you still understand Mencius? Have you been educated by that corrupt Confucian person from Fusu? Bitter than his heart, bitter as a fart, I'm afraid his head will fall before he even has the heart. Qin Shi Huang is clearly against him, that scammer." Just then, a sharp voice came from not far away. "Please take the order, Li Zhao." Li Zhao squinted his eyes and saw clearly. Isn't this the eunuch next to Qin Shi Huang? It seems that the edict has arrived and he will be officially granted a gift. He quickly knelt down, looking extremely respectful. The emperor decreed that Li Zhao should be appointed as the Xiaonai and be in charge of pre-arranged farming. Shang Xian's sharp voice slowly came out, and Li Zhao listened attentively. Suddenly, my heart trembled and my head couldn't help but tilt, with a hint of surprise on my face, because that voice rang out in my mind again. Considering your achievements and touching the system, we reward you with a recipe for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium fertilizers, as well as a political economy textbook. Would the host accept it? End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Starting Farming. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors.